Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today, and this entire week, is lovingly sponsored Mordechai ben Menashe v'Chatun Oved, Alav Shalom, by his children and grandchildren, Terry and Rebecca, and Darren and Nicole Oved. May the elevation of his soul stand as a merit for all of Am Yisrael. Tenish Bateo Tzura B'Tzura Hayim. Breakfast in the Class also dedicated in loving memory to Nishmat Baba Bozorg Iran Moshe ben Yehezkel HaKohen Alav Shalom. Ohev Shalom V'Rodev Shalom. Your commitment to Shabbat and Tefillah with the Minyan lives eternally through your children and grandchildren. Thank you for showing us what it means to be a true Ebed Hashem. May his neshama have an aliyah sponsored by his granddaughter Devorah Redford, as well for the Refuah Shlema Eliyahu Shmuel Mazar Fortuné and Chana Matzim Befega, and the co-brew is sponsored by David Yash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to good today and every day. We also want to give a shout out to a daily listener, Brenda Neva from Panama, who has sent her son and grandsons to come to the class that she listens to all the time and forwards to them. Hazaku Baruch Shibizoche to see Banim Urei Banim Oskim Batorah Uba Mitzvot. Of course, I would be remiss if I did not thank Hashem publicly. Thank you, Hashem. Yesterday is the Hebrew day of my 25th anniversary. So we want to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for getting us here, for giving us and helping us build this beautiful family and have Eshet Chayil that really supports everything that we do in this life. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for taking care of us in such a beautiful way, and I'm looking forward, Be'ezrat Hashem, to many, many more happy years of marriage, Be'ezrat Hashem. And as well, I want to bless you from that place, from a place of hakarat hatov, about this thing, about this beracha, that each and every one of you should merit, not only to find the right person, not only to have 25 years, but also to have kahena, v'kahena, like this and this on top, one on top of the other. A dear friend of mine, Johnny Moradov, from England, called me and said, "You married 25 years. What's your best advice to be able to have a marriage that lasts 25 years?" I said, "Marry the right person." That's the best advice. Be'ezrat Hashem. We should be zocheh. When a person remembers that they're married to the right person, then they remember to not lose their temper, not be upset, appreciate everything that person is in your life. Be'ezrat Hashem. L'chaim, Be'ezrat Hashem, to a beautiful week, a beautiful day. Let's begin. My friends, the Torah tells us a very interesting language, a very interesting expression. As we mentioned, Zot Chukat Torah, this is the Torah, Adam ki yamut be'oel, a man who passes be'oel in the tent. We talked a little bit about this pasuk with regards to the concept of purity, of tahara earlier in the week. Today I want to focus maybe a little bit on something else. Our Chachamim tell us about this pasuk. Amar Resh Lakish learned, Minayin she'en divrei Torah mitkaymin. How do you know the words of Torah, they're not sustained ela b'mi shememit atzmo alehem, unless it's in a person who kills themselves for it. We talked a little bit about this idea also of finding elements of a person's personality that you need to kill. Bad midot that are part of your etzem, you're part of atzmo, that you need to be memit in order to be able to have the words of Torah stay with you and not leave through your bad practices, through your bad midot. But today, I want to talk about a little bit of a different angle on this concept. So, to understand it, I want to take a look with you under the hood. What does this idea mean of a person killing themselves for Torah? What is the idea? What's the concept? The Panovich Rav Kahneman, once had an amazing idea. He saw that there was a great leader in Ashkenaz Jewry at the time, the great Talmid Chacham, the great leader of the whole generation, and his name was Rav Yitzchak Elchanan. And he decided, you know something, if we really want to change the Jewish people, what do we need? I remember someone said to me once, what's the difference between a successful Jewish community and a Jewish community that's not successful? He said, whether or not they have a good rabbi. The rabbi is not going to do everything. But if the rabbi is inspiring the people to take on missions, bringing people in, making the shul a place which is comfortable, where people want to come together, where people want to work for the community. When you're holding up those values, then a lot of times the rabbi in a good position can change Am Yisrael. Just to think about what this means. For some of you, you may remember, the Sephardic world in Eretz Israel, or even around the world, before Chacham Ovadia and post Chacham Ovadia. It's hard to explain how far those two worlds are from one another. And the difference between the world of Torah that you have in the Sephardic world today and what was, it's another planet. And from the beginning, he always talked about this idea of la'achzir atara liyoshna, to bring a crown back to the Jewish people, where we once, to an aspect or an element of the Jewish people, where we once had all the great Rishonim that were coming from the Sephardi countries, right, that were leaders, and it had diluted itself at that point. And he felt very strongly about reinstituting that. So a big rabbi can make a massive difference. The biggest rabbis can make the biggest difference. And in their Piskei Halacha, in their outlook on life, in the way they inspire the people, in the way that they teach, and the way that they also model themselves, people will learn and people will emulate those midot in their communities. You have a rabbi who's very loving and who's very accepting, and he wants to inspire and encourage. So what do his Talmidim become? They become versions of him, if they're real Talmidim. You have a rabbi who's always critical, always pointing out everything that's bad about everyone. What happens? The Talmidim learn that the holiest thing you could do is find fault with somebody. So the students become beautiful, exactly like their master, finding fault with anything and everyone, including other rabbis, by the way, that are much bigger than them. But that's what happens. They emulate the midot of their rabbi, which is why it's so important to find a rav that you actually respect, right? What does it say? If your rabbi is compared lemalach Hashem Sevakot, to an angel of God, bakesh Torah mifiu, then you should seek to learn Torah from him. But if not, if you don't respect him, but he has a lot of Torah, if he's not a respectable person, then maybe you'd be better off not learning from him. My friends, so Rav Kahneman had a great idea. His idea was, what if we built a place of excellence? We built a kollel that would produce 10 Rav Yitzchak Elchanans. That was his idea. How would the Jewish people change if you could pick the best, brightest Torah scholars? And you know what? Remove from them any worry, any da'aga, any issue. Take care of them from Aleph ad Taf. Make sure that their schedule is completely open. They don't need to have any jobs. They don't need to give bar mitzvah lessons. Not that there's anything wrong with giving bar mitzvah lessons. They don't need to do anything. They don't need a hazan. They don't need to read the Torah. They don't need to do anything. All they do all day is sit and study until they become the greatest rabbis of their generation. What if we could build a kollel for the highest form of mitzuyanim? That was his idea. Obviously, it's an expensive endeavor to take off from them the burden of any possible financial worry. Pay the school bills for the kids, pay everything. So he decided, he had a great idea. He was going to go visit the Rosh Yeshiva from Radin at the time, whose name was Rabbi Moshe Lendinsky, and he said to him, listen, I know that you have a very close friend who lives in Moscow. Go to Moscow, speak to him about this idea. This guy, you and him and his friends, they can cover the expenses for creating super kollel, right? That's what's going to happen. It's going to arrange it. The rabbi hears the idea. He says, okay, I understand, I'll do my best. He travels, he gets, after being given pressure by some other rabbanim, he goes, he sits down with his friend and he tells him about this kollel where he's going to build 10 Rav Yitzchak Elchanans. Okay, the fellow, his name was Shershevsky, he writes out on the spot, writes out a check, hands it to his dear friend and this rabbi, Rabbi Moshe, for 40,000 rubles, which again, that doesn't mean much to me. I don't deal in rubles. but it was an astronomical sum. A sum that he thought he would need to get from many people. The rabbi said, if that's what's going to be, here you go. If that's what you're going to produce. He goes, it's a lot of money, but it's very little money to be able to produce, people like that. If you could back a horse, excuse me for calling it a horse, but if you could back a horse you knew was going to be Chacham Ovadia Yosef, could you imagine being the person who paid the value, the monthly stipend for Chacham Ovadia while he was studying to become a rabbi? What an unbelievable zechut that would be. Okay, he writes him out the check, hands him the check, and he says, but I'm a little bit, he says, I'm a little bit, it's a lot of money, I'm very happy to do it. He goes, but I'm a little bit surprised. And Rav Moshe says to his friend, this wealthy man, he says, why are you surprised? He says, because it's very well known that this fellow, Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan, the reason why he became the great leader that he became was because when he was a young rabbi, struggling to be able to make it, he had a job in a tiny city, I think it was called Zablin. They could not even afford to pay him the amount of money that he needed for his living expenses. So he had a place there, but that was all they could give him. His father-in-law would give them food for the week, for Shabbat, and they would apportion it so they would last them as long as possible. But there was a few days every single week where there was no food in the house. And Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan was once telling over to his dear friend, he was saying how he remembers those years where he was studying in the house, and there were children in the house, and they were crying, and they were starving. They had no food. And he'd sitting there learning, studying, growing, but having this burden and feeling terrible, sacrificing the most unbelievable sacrifice to be able to do, to become the person he became. He says, you think that you make a kollel where you take every worry away from a person like this, where they don't have to think 1 second, they're living and they're sitting on a big couch, they have a brand new tailor-made suit, everything for them is done, everything is beautiful, everything is easy. You think that's going to produce 10 Rav Elchanans? I don't know if it will produce one. The rabbi heard these words from his dear friend. He smiled, he hugged his friend, and he ripped up the check. And he says, you know something? He says, I felt exactly like you do. But I didn't know, I'm a rabbi. I'm not the person that has to spend the money. So I didn't feel like I should. But if that's how you feel, I agree 100%. He tore it in half. En divrei Torah mitkaymin, ela b'mi shememit atzmo alehem. It has to be hard. It's supposed to be hard. When I was a young man, probably one of the most exciting sefarim that you would learn as a young man in yeshiva was a sefer called Ktsot HaChoshen. And you always knew, by the way, unbelievable. Lahavdil elef alfei havdalot. They end off a TV show, a movie, or a book. They end off the book that they used to end with a cliffhanger, right? At the end of the Encyclopedia Brown book, Harry Potter book, whatever, and then he's about to die, and you have to buy the next book, right? In the Ktsot HaChoshen, you'd see at the end of the piece, there would be a little hand. Anyone here learned Ktsot? And the hand is pointing like this at a line. And he would outline for you, here's the chidush, here's the bomb. And you get excited as you're learning. And you get there and you finally see, you're like, wow, mind blown, unbelievable. Now listen to this. The rabbi, when he wrote that book, the Ktsot HaChoshen, he was so poor that he lived in a house and they couldn't afford wood to burn for the oven. So he was freezing. It was so cold that he would learn and study underneath the blanket on his bed. He couldn't afford a table. So what did he do? He had 2 barrels, empty barrels, with a plank of wood on top of it, and that's what he studied on. Like, it looks like some prop out of like Disney's, Pirates of the whatever, Lost Cat, I don't know, whatever, right? You understand? This is where he learned. It was so cold that the ink that he was writing with would freeze. So he needed to keep the ink underneath his pillow, so it would stay warm enough so he could write the Chidushim. Years later, he wrote another sefer, amazing book, called the Avnei Miluim. And someone once came to him and asked him, Rabbi, how come your original book, the Ketzot you wrote when you were much younger. That book was much more widely read, used, quoted. And the second book you wrote, Avnei Miluim, much later, you had much more wisdom. That one is not as popular as still. I mean, I used to love the Avnei Miluim. Always genius, insights, unbelievable. But it wasn't as, and he says, you know why? He says, because the book that I wrote, with those hardships, with that difficulty, I died for that. I sweated for that. I didn't sweat, I froze. I froze for that. That's why I had an extra special siyata d'shmaya. And it has staying power. You know, you have a tree. You plant the tree in the earth and you dig it this deep. I never in my life thought, I have to tell you the truth, I never in my life thought I would own something, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, called an auger. Did I pronounce that right? Anyone know? An auger it's like a drill bit for a guy who's planting plants. What do? You don't really know much about planting. You dig a hole. How deep are you digging? If the plant is this big, you dig it this big, right? But if you plant something shallow, what happens? Wind comes and pulls it out. Squirrels come, they dig it up, right? You want something to last, what happens? You bury it deep. Now, the experience of burying something very deep in the ground, you take a pit, you plant it shallow, it will also grow, but it will fall over. The deeper it's buried under the earth, the deeper it is, the deeper the pain, the deeper the challenge, the greater the staying power of that thing. And divrei Torah mitkaymin ela b'mi shememit asmo alehem. Now I love this idea. You know why? Because who's teaching us this idea? I don't know if you paid attention. The quote itself comes from one of the most famous Amoraim. His name was Resh Lakish. It's Gemara Berachot and Daf Samach Gimel. This man, Resh Lakish, did not grow up religious. He didn't go to a Jewish school. He didn't go to yeshiva. He grew up, in fact, as a bandit. A chance encounter with Rabbi Yochanan resulted in him becoming a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay? And he wound up becoming the great Resh Lakish. But you know how difficult it was for a man like that to change his entire life? To go from being some gangster, with gold teeth, to becoming a guy that's learning in the Bet Midrash every day? You know how hard that is? As a guy, as a rabbi, my father's a rabbi. I grew up over there. I went to Lakewood Cheder. My path was charted from the time I was young that I was going to be a person that went to yeshiva, that studied Torah, that kept Shabbat. But I don't know. Could you imagine if I was in the Bloods or the Crips? I was some gang in LA, and I all of a sudden met some rabbi, bump into Rav Pesach Kron, right? Now all of a sudden you realize the light. You turn in your Hummer, for a station wagon, right? Is that when moved to Lakewood, right? Is that something, right? I need to say this. It's not only aniyut and poverty that is difficult in Torah, is difficulty in Torah. When someone feels like they're leaving their friends behind. How often does it happen? A person starts to become more religious and all of a sudden, all these people that's their social circle, they're not going out to the same restaurants anymore. They don't talk about the same things. They're not interested in the same things, etc., etc. Now the person is giving up. What are they giving up? They're giving up friendships. They're giving up their social circle. That's a kiyum of this pasuk. Understand that you're planting deep. Because in the language of the Gemara, we learn from the story of Choni HaMa'agal, O Havruta, O Mituta. Either friends, either a social circle, or death. A little bit different than the original line of liberty and death, right? But either friends or death. When a person is giving up, they don't have that time and that same connection with their friends because they've decided to grow a little bit more than their social circle. That's divrei Torah mitkaymin because you killed yourself for it. You're ridiculed. Someone makes fun of you because you know what? You're wearing a kippah in the streets. With your Jew hat. One of your friends makes fun of you. And the rabbi's got a hold of you. And now you're a praying guy. I remember where you were. I remember Studio 54. I remember. They remind you. They make fun of you. That's this pasuk. You planted deep. You died for Torah. You know why? Because it says that when a person embarrasses someone, a person who's malbin pnei chavero berabim, you embarrass someone publicly, it's as if you killed them. You died for Torah. Someone embarrassed you because you're religious. You just died for Torah. You just planted deep. My friends, when these moments happen, on the one hand we feel embarrassed, on the other hand, treasure it. Something goes against the grain, Rabbi. You don't know. I was the first guy always, shark. Guy starts up with me in business. I smile at him in the meeting. He ripped me off. I smile at him. But I know one thing in my heart, and anyone who knows me in the world of business knows, this guy, dead. He'll never work in this town again. I'll take every building. I'll take a loss to buy his properties. I'll put him out of business. You mess with me, done. That's my rabbi, that's my MO. I'm successful because everybody knows not to start with me. I've heard people say this, and the craziest part is when they say it, they're proud. Ya'ani. Now the guy's learning, now the guy's growing. He feels he's learning about vatranut, he's learning about onat mamon, he's learning about causing someone pain, he's learning about responsibility, he's learning about parnasa, he's learning that no one can touch your parnasa. His whole operation needs to change. What did we just do? We took the old version of him and we killed it. You planted deep. And divrei Torah mitkaimim ela b'mi shememit asmo alehem. I want to end, if I can, with one last piece. Those of you who are learning Gemara with us, Masechet Megillah, we finished. We did Ta'anit, Megillah, and now we're getting close to finishing Makot. We need everybody here to be studying, to be pushing themselves. Because if Torah is only there, it only stays with someone who's sweating, you better figure out how to sweat. I was driving on the, to come here this morning. And I made a right turn on Highway 35. And right in that new development on the corner of 35 and Deal Road, I saw a brand new place. I don't even know if it's open. All I saw is it said, Sweat 40. Has anyone seen this? No, have you seen this? I think it said Sweat 40. I was driving, I wasn't looking so carefully. Huh?
Yeah, it's on Deal Road.
Is that what it's called? Sweat 40. I thought it was called that as a clock. Sweat 40. I'm guessing that they have 40-minute sessions that you go and you sweat in this gym. And I'm thinking, Ya'eni, that's my Gemara class. 3 times a week, 40 minutes. Sweat 40. Toil in Torah. You're giving tzedakah. Don't give and feel like a champ leaning back in your chair. Give and let it hurt. Don't forgive people that you love only. Don't forget people that did only small things to you. This crossed the line. Cross the line is your gold mine. That's your man. That's divrei Torah mitkaimim and mishememit atzmo. So I want to share with you a beautiful pshat in the Gemara Megillah. We learned that there was a Targum called Targum Yonatan ben Uziel. And when he said the Targum, when he translated the Targum into Aramaic on the Nevi'im and Ketuvim, Nizdaza Eretz Yisrael 400 parsa al 400 parsa. 400 parsa. Parsa is 4 mil. 4 mil is, let's say, 3 miles, okay? So 400 times 3 miles is 1,200 miles by 1,200 miles. Eretz Yisrael shook 1,200 miles by 1,200 miles. What does that mean? It's not 1,200 miles top to bottom, side to side. But it's an idea that it was like an earthquake. An earthquake hit Eretz Yisrael when the Targum came out. Why? V'yatze'a bat kol. A heavenly voice came out and said, Mi hu zeh Who is this? Shegila Sitarai, that revealed my secrets, Libnei Adam, to humanity. Who revealed my secrets to humanity? Now, when we learned the Gemara in Masechet Megillah, what did we say? We brought the pshat that the reason is, why was God nervous, so to speak, not nervous? Why was Hashem shaking the land when they had a targum for the Nevi'im and Ketubim, where you didn't have a targum on the Torah? There was no shaking, only for this. The answer is because in Nevi'im and Ketuvim you have the secrets of Yemot HaMashiach. So the secrets of Yemot HaMashiach, that was the whole earth was shaking from that. Okay, they would now be revealed. We said one pshat. I want to share with you the pshat of the Tosfot read. Listen to what he says. He says, Kivan, shetirgem et ha-pesukim. Once you translated those pesukim, me'ata from now, lo yimseru nafsham la'avin kevatechila. Now, you're not going to be putting in the same level of effort to understand it. You know why? Because Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, original art scroll. It's all translated for you now. Now you can sit back, read it in your own language. It's much easier. When the Jewish people would stop toiling in Torah, therefore, oh my gosh, what's going to be? It was an earth-shaking moment. My friends, anybody here who ever learned with an art scroll will tell you, you still need to apply yourself. You still need to sweat. You still need to push. You still need to try to be able to understand what you're learning. It's not like you're reading, a cartoon magazine. It's not like you're reading, an article on the news. It's still hard. But what shook the earth was that as hard as you could go, you went this hard less. My friends, it's not only sweat that plants deep and waters our plants and gives us deep roots, but it's the sweat that is the max that we can give. Hashem should bless us all the time to seek, to try to die a little bit for the Torah. You go to the minyan, you're focused for 2 seconds of the Amidah, focus for 4 seconds. Guy tells you, I'm ADD. Rabbi, I can't focus on anything. I said, oh, it's so nice. I changed the subject. Anyway, I told him, I'm preparing a shiur. I said, what's your favorite movie? Guy's like, oh, Rabbi, I saw this movie, amazing. This one, it's hilarious, it's this, it's that. I said, oh, really? How long is it? He thinks I'm going to watch it. He's like, it's not long, maybe 2.5 hours, 2 hours. I was like, yeah, it's good. Good lines, good. He goes, yeah. He goes, I could say it by heart. I said, what happened to your ADHD? 2.5 hours you sat with it. What happened? Guy's telling me he can't focus on more than the first beracha in the Amidah. How long is it taking you? My friends, I always say this, and this is super important. You know why the guy could focus on that? Because he wants to. So he draws his attention, he focuses in, he doesn't want to miss a line. It's a joke. Makes me feel good. When I laugh, I want to feel good. So you know what? I'm going to focus in on this. If we realized how good the Torah makes you feel, how good that the mitzvot make you feel, how when you look around, and I'll tell you this now, especially if you're young, you can't plant a tall tree from day to day. You have those big, beautiful trees in Deal, New Jersey, in the Hamptons, Atlantic Beach, 100 feet tall. That doesn't get planted on a Tuesday and you have it on a Thursday. And if it does, it's because it sat somewhere else for 40 years. You want Torah to stay, not just with you, but with your children. You best plant deep now. One of the most emotional things for me in seeing my son get bar mitzvah is that when my son wrote the thank yous in his speech, which we didn't tell him to write, he said he learned how to pray like a mensch by watching me. I don't know if that's true or not, but that your son should feel that they could look to you to learn how to pray. Is that what you want? Do you want your kids to be honest children? Do you want them to have a Shabbat table? Do you want them to care? So invest in making that table in your future. And it's never too late. It's never too late. A guy I know, his whole life he was in shmatas. He sold clothes. After he retired, he took some of his money, started investing it in real estate. All the kids, where are all the kids now working? With him, in real estate. They went into the business that their father did when he was young. They followed him there. But now the father did something else. What are they following him? Following him there. Your kids will always look to you. It's never too late to plant deep. Be'ezrat Hashem, Hashem should bless us to see those things that we spend so much time and effort on flower and grow. And as well, that we should be zocheh to recognize the value of these things so that planting deep and dying for something, actually, as you know in the gym, as you sweated for 40 minutes, you played ball for 2 hours, how do you feel after you're spent and schwitzing and smell like an animal? You feel great. Hashem should bless us to find that feeling as well. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen. Rabbi Chananya.